Welcome to the Joy Work Show, the podcast that champions the business owners building bold, joyful, heart-led lives. I'm your host, Diane, strategist, coach and mounter, your tough love accountability queen and founder of the Joy Work Club. This is the show and tell for people doing business a little differently, their way. And each episode we explore the stories, strategies, and sometimes a little bit scrappy behind the scenes that shape a joy-filled business journey. As you can see, I'm playing about with the intros a little bit. So if you've even noticed, let me know what you think. But today I'm joined by the brilliant Becky Ray, founder of Culture Kick, who brings a totally refreshing take on what it really means to create a joyful business from the inside out. Becky started out in engineering, moved through male-dominated industries, and eventually found her calling in helping organisations reimagine their workplace culture and what it actually means. We talk about what it's like starting a business in the middle of COVID, how burnout showed her what not to build, and the powerful role leadership plays in shaping environments that support both people and performance. Becky also shares her Culture Cake framework. Yes, it's just as good as it sounds. And why joy, psychological safety, and strong values aren't nice to have, they're the ingredients for real success. This one's for anyone who's ever worked in a toxic team and thought there has to be a better way than this. But as always, it's so much better to hear from the guests themselves. So let's go. Hi, Becky, and welcome to the Joy Work Show. I am so pleased to welcome you today and find out more about you. We are in the same circle, so we know a little bit about each other, but I cannot wait for me to find out and for the listeners to find out more about your story. So tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So my name is Becky Ray and my business is called Culture Kick. So I'm into my 5th year of running a business now. So I kind of only just feel like I know what I'm doing.
Well, firstly, congratulations. Well done. 5 years is immense.
They do say statistically, most businesses fail in the first 5 years. So it feels like a significant milestone. So
Amazing.
But
well done.
let me take you back to where I started, if that's the kind of route people want to, feel.
Absolutely. We love a story.
My route is a bit different and probably not what you might expect. So I started my career. So I didn't go to college or university, as lots of people did. I chose to get a job, like a real job. That's what we'd
How
say.
dare you?
With my hands and start earning some dough as soon as I was able to. So I did an apprenticeship. And I did it with a big engineering company, and I used to fix forklift trucks. And it was unusual for a girl to do that. And I remember when I went for my interview, I'm not kidding, the guy looked me up and down, literally like this in slow motion, and went, "You're a girl." And I was like, flabbergasted, because I was like, how do you answer that question? And I just went, and I remember in that moment, I was like, I have to just stand up for myself now. And I just went, yes, I am a girl. And then that was the kind of tone of my career for the kind of the next 20 years, because I spent a lot of time. We don't say male dominated industries anymore. That's an old term. We say male populated.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's new. They're
Okay.
not dominating. There's just more of them.
That's it. You're absolutely right about that.
If we take that word dominating off, it just makes for a more level playing field. So I was an engineer, and I was actually on the front page of like my local newspaper because I was the first girl to do that specific profession in the country. So I had a van, I had a toolbox, I had overalls, and I spent 10 years driving around to like construction sites and factories and warehouses, fixing big forklift trucks, sometimes like bigger than your house, and big earth moving equipment. And I loved it. I love the camaraderie. I love the banter. And I know banter gets a bad name, doesn't it? But I loved that level of humour. And I know we're all about joy. I got so much joy from that environment. It was tough, it was hard, but I loved it and I did it for a good solid 10 years. Then I realized, there's a lot of like lying in puddles. So, it's a beautiful day today. So I'd be sat eating an ice lolly, but on the miserable, cold, murky days, I just got to a point where I was like, oh, I just don't know if I want to be lying on the floor under a truck anymore. And then I moved it. So I retrained, I requalified into health and safety. And I became a health and safety leader, again, in quite high risk, operational, sort of dynamic environments. So the railways, infrastructure, like tunnels, bridges, construction, military aviation, manufacturing, utilities, all those kind of big, heavy, dirty, what you describe as like blue collar type industries. And again, I really thrived in those kinds of industries. And weirdly, and I don't know how it happened, I did that for exactly 10 years. And
So
at this
you got
point,
a
I know
10-year
people are
itch.
like, she don't look that old. And then I lost my job 5 years ago when COVID hit.
Okay.
I was working for a big construction company and planned to stay there for a long time. And construction stayed open even when everyone got sent home.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, they started kind of reducing the headcount in lots of big sort of firms. And unfortunately, I lost my job. And it was the first time I ever lost a job. And I don't know if you've ever lost a job and it wasn't your decision. And that was really hard.
I've been
So I kind of
part
had
of
to.
companies that closed down, but there was always kind of somewhere else to go. I haven't ever kind of lost a job.
Yeah.
I suppose it's just that COVID is exactly the same as that, though, in part of
Yeah.
that it wasn't even the company's choice. It was just something they had to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't, oh, you're not really performing.
Yeah,
You're
it was
out.
down to
Yeah.
circumstances and like
Yeah.
world events.
Yeah. And so ironically, that's when I started my business after I just lost my job. Because as you know, I had two small children. We needed kind of two incomes at the time. So I was like, what am I going to do?
Uh-huh.
And then that's when I made the decision to start my own business.
My goodness. So what was it? What was the idea behind the business? So what is Culture Kick? What does it do? And what was the initial idea that you kind of came up with at that point? Because it wasn't, I think it was a transitional time for lots of people. And I know that it was transitional for me in that the way I was already thinking. I had COVID babies, but I wasn't pregnant when we went into COVID. So it was something that changed for me. But even my first experiences of those first few months changed my outlook and certainly has changed the way I run my business because of the changes I went through. So it was for you to think innovatively at that time. So what was your initial like concept ideas?
So I don't think it was in that traditional sense. I sat down with a business plan, came up with a name and what I was going to do. It kind of just happened. So I lost my job and I had 1 week's notice. It was a really tight turnaround.
Uh-huh.
So I just did the thing most people do. They just ring everybody they know and go, hey, this is my circumstances. How are you? I've not spoken to you for a while. And I just started reaching out to my wider network. And a company that I used to work for called Babcock, really big engineering firm, I rang a friend there and she was like, well, we've got capacity in our team. We've got some kind of safety leadership improvement work that you could do, but you would need to be a contractor and have a private limited company to do it.
Yeah.
I could take you on. So that's my first gig and that's how it started. So I literally set up my business that night and it cost me like £6, I think, on Company's House. And I just set my business up. So it wasn't that let's plan it all out and brainstorm and stuff. It just happened and I got my first gig. So I ended up doing initially kind of health and safety leadership, improvement, business improvement type jobs. And I just got loads of work that way. And I remember in the first year, there was one point where I was getting paid for 8 days a week.
My goodness. It's not
because
bad for your first year of business, is it?
because I said yes, and this is like something you learn if we run a business. I said yes to every piece of work that came my way because I was like, my sole purpose is to get work and to get money, and that equates to business and success. So I said yes to everything. And like we spoke about earlier, like burnout, I don't think I got to burnout, but it's not okay to do 8 days a week because obviously I was doing a whole day on site and then I was working remotely for another client, which I was fitting in the evenings and weekends. So the money was good. I was rolling in the money and I was like, this is a win. But actually, I then had to realize the hard way that not every piece of work and not every offer of money is what you want, and it doesn't actually equate to feeling successful.
It is, and it's a really difficult lesson to learn. And I'm just wondering if coming from, I'm going to now say male populated
Yeah,
industries, I would always have said male dominated. So there's
yeah,
something you've changed
there
for me
we go.
today, because I too came from a male populated industry, and I felt that, like you, had harder I worked in terms of time and hours, the more
Yeah,
successful I thought I was going to be. But what I've learned, sometimes the hard way, other times with finding wonderful people who are teaching me things, is that actually that's not necessarily what hard work looks like. That
yeah,
hard work can look like it's not about the hours. You can work lots of hours and not be that successful.
yeah,
Or you can be strategic and you can actually be
yeah,
successful the way you want to feel successful. And I just wonder if it does come from these male populated industries, because I was very much, mine was the direct sales and marketing industry in the UK, in the home improvement sector. And it was just that buy, sell, the harder, the longer hours. I was doing like 80-hour, 90-hour weeks,
yeah,
and it was just kind of ingrained in me. But it's so difficult, and we're not institutionalized the way public sector workers are, like teachers and NHS and forces and things like that. But there's still that indoctrination of your beliefs and the way that you needed to be, and also the way kind of showing up in that masculine aggressive
yeah,
energy. And it's really hard to shake. It is really, really
yeah,
hard to shake. So how did you then adapt? How did you look at that and think, okay, I can't do 8 days work in seven
yeah.
days with
Well,
two kids, a husband, a house?
and I think it is, you're right. I think it is that masculine energy that I pretty much spent a lot of my time in that masculine energy, which is essentially just do, work, work, work. And in those types of industries where you're just exchanging time for money, and the more time you do, the more money you get. And like we know now, it's not directly proportional like that. But I didn't know any of that stuff then. I was just doing the best I could, knowing what I knew. But I reached a point where I was like, I don't like this bit of work, and I don't like this client, and I don't like the way it feels, and I don't like the whole, because lots of people jump from like corporate employment jobs to running their own business because they want the freedom. And actually, most people have to learn the hard way, like I did. You work more than for less, and it almost doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this is not what I want. Like, I've got a business now, and I can have the freedom to run it like I want, and I need to start making some decisions. So I had to start saying no. And actually, I was in one contract that I was supposed to be there for 6 months. And I did a bit of digging in the background in the contract to see if I could get out of it, and I could. So I just said no and I left. And actually, they didn't like it. And they were quite explicit about that. But when I did that, the first time I said no, I was like, I'm taking the power back. And then I started to go, right, I don't like that work. I don't like that work, but I do like this. So my background was kind of operations and safety and risk and leadership. And I didn't like the transactional stuff, but I really loved the people and the culture and the leadership stuff. So I was like, I'm going to pivot my business away from the transactional stuff and more into the culture stuff. Started doing my own research, learning other stuff. I went to Aberdeen University for a little bit and studied organizational psychology because I really wanted to get under the nuts and bolts about how businesses and teams operate. And then kind of slowly over time, Culture Kick was born, and I started to then build myself a brand. So I've only really had like a brand for the last 18 months, 2 years. Before I didn't even have any of that. I've now got like a framework. I've got specific things I deliver in a specific way. And it now, only now, feels like my business, my way.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to decide what kinds of clients I work with. I get to decide what the work looks like.
And that's
And
it. And that is
real
where,
freedom.
like I always say that I don't buy into the way, particularly on like Instagram and things, the whole freedom business, freedom lifestyle type thing. Because if you're running a business successfully and at scale, there is responsibilities and there is things that you need to do. So you don't have that full freedom. But there is people that would say freedom of choice. And I always say I want to have choice. And that's what business can give you. It can give you the freedom of choice, both through feeling freedom financially and feeling more security there, and also time, because you can choose
Yeah.
what you wanted to do. And I think it was 3 or 4 months into my business and I was working with a one-to-one client and they wanted more time, they wanted a bigger contract. So I put all the proposal together to them and they started bartering on price. And eventually I had to walk away and say, no, this is the price or we're not
Yeah.
moving forward and it was really difficult because 3 months into my business, of course I needed that income. Of course I needed that. But I knew if I said yes, the next 6 months, from a time point of view, they would have taken the sole amount of the time, which I was willing to do for a price.
Yeah.
I couldn't do at the detriment to what else I was trying to build. So I had to say no. And it's a scary thing to do, but it always opens doors for something else or for the
Yeah.
growth or for the vision that you're trying to make. And I think it's those really difficult decisions that people find so difficult. They're difficult decisions, but
Yeah.
people struggle with, because how do you say no? Like you said, like you have to take away that client because you have now got a company that you want and a business that you are now building and scaling and changing all of the time. But you wouldn't have been able to do that if you'd stuck with this
Yeah.
8-day week scenario.
Yeah.
So your business is called Culture Kick. So tell me a little bit about the importance of culture in an organization.
Yeah, so I'd say I always say that this very small problem, and I say that sarcastically, that I'm trying to fix is there are too many people that are miserable at work. And I bet you know someone who's currently employed in a job that they're probably really good at for a decent company, but actually they're unhappy. And that unhappiness is really bad for people, but actually it's really bad for businesses. If you've got a team of people and a number of them are not happy, they're frustrated, they're stressed, they're miserable, they cannot and will not do their best work. So, whatever you're trying to achieve as a business, you're not going to get as far as you're going to get. So, I see it as a benefit not only to individuals, but the wider business. So, I frame it all around workplace culture, but I'm coming at it from an operational point of view rather than a HR point of view because my background is operations and risk. And typically, I'm working with the kinds of industries, like those blue collar industries, like water companies, utilities companies, construction companies, that have got large amounts of people. And I believe if we're not setting those people up for success so that they can go and do their job and do their job well and feel good doing it, then their people are going to be unhappy and your business is not going to achieve the potential it's going to achieve.
No, I think, and it's so important. And I think people misunderstand culture. And it's really interesting that you're coming from an organizational point of view, because my background is organization processes, sales and marketing. So from my point of view, I knew I had to look after my teams. My teams were what earned me money. My teams is the more successful the team was, the more zeros I had on the end of my paycheck. So it was really important. But people used to talk to me a lot about like my bonus and my targets. And I said, no, I concentrate on my team's targets because if they hit their targets, mine's taken care of. I don't even need to. And it was all about them feeling. I used to joke and say that I end up being like mother, sister, auntie, solicitor, supervisor, best friend, all of the things, and like care worker. Some.
Yeah.
I wanted them to feel, because you spend so much
Mm.
time at work. And as I said, we work long hours in my industry, so much time at work, and it was really pressurized. it was a really pressurized place. And I was lucky enough to take staff with me whenever I went. So I had this core kind of team of people. And I now know, and I don't think I really appreciated it. In fact, I know I didn't really appreciate it at the time, but I now know that was because of a culture that I created.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it was a culture of care, and it was a culture of success, and it was a culture of, I looked after them in all types of ways. But I think too often that people think culture comes from putting a pool table in a breakout room or doing all these periphery things that actually,
Yeah.
if you've got a great culture, then absolutely they will
Yeah.
add
Add
to it.
those bits because they're just sprinkles on top. Of course
Yeah.
they are.
But if people are unhappy, pool isn't going to make them happy, isn't going to be the
Mm.
reason why they don't go for the job down the
Yeah.
road that is paying the
Yeah.
same as you were paying. We used to even keep staff who would say, oh, there's this place down the road that's offering more money. And I'm like, well, if you want to go, that's absolutely what you want to go, but think about everything else you get. And we used to keep those people because they were happy in their roles, they were happy
Yeah.
in their jobs. And I just think I think people get culture wrong
Yeah.
a
They
lot.
do. But like you just explained though, and I love that that was the kind of leader you were, and it sounds like that came naturally to you and you saw yourself putting on those different hats. I don't think that naturally comes to a lot of leaders, and I think that's where the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
But equally, I'd like to think you've experienced that yourself, and often we mirror the kind of boss we've had.
Uh-huh.
But typically, the kinds of industries I'm sort of working with have been around a long time. And the kind of leadership that did work 20, 30, 40 years ago just doesn't fly today. But if you get promoted to supervisor, team leader, ops manager, because you turn up every day and you're a decent, loyal person, nobody's probably given you any leadership skills or development. So you're just going to do what your boss did to you, which is
Mm-hmm.
probably, I'm just going to tell you what to do. I haven't got time to listen to it because I've also got loads of stuff to do, and we'll just hope for the best. What you described, I think, is quite special and quite unique, but I'm not seeing that myself. I'm having to open people's eyes to the fact that you need to be compassionate and empathetic and take the time to speak to people. And what motivates Bob might not motivate Sandra, and what Bob needs to be successful might be different to what Sandra needs. And being able to have those conversations.
And it is, and you do need to teach them like individuals, but that doesn't mean that's not at the detriment to organizational processes. You know, I think and thank you so much for saying those lovely things. And I did, luckily, I was brought up with those those ethoses through my work originally, but I have also gone and worked at companies where the people above me weren't doing that to me. But by
Yeah,
that point, I was that established that I was just like, I have a job to do and this is how I know how to do it. So
yeah,
luckily, I was the barrier between that and the team.
yeah,
So I kind of pulled all that together. And obviously, I did choose to leave them after maternity leave. So
yeah,
there's, you know, that's that. But because if I am that kind of loyal person that if I had experienced that, I would never leave. No, I
mm,
would if I was happy in my work, if I was feeling challenged, if there was opportunities within the business, if that's what I wanted, but I think businesses need to understand there's lots of different people and lots of different personalities out there. You have to make sure you're looking after them all because you can have the people who want the opportunities and all they're there to do is to climb the ladder. But you've got other people that they're not interested in that. They
yeah,
want to do a good job at the role that they are in. Not everybody's wanting to push and strive for more money. They just want to do really, really, really well, love the job that they're doing, and go home and live the rest of their life. And it's about, like you say, understanding all of those individuals. And I do think you're absolutely right. I do think there is more companies that aren't doing it. And I think it's those fundamentals. It's the same with even when I work with small business owners and I talk a lot about putting the customer at the heart of your business. But when I take that into the corporate world, it's about putting people at the heart of your business.
mhm,
Because if you do that, you're taking care of everybody.
yeah. Or I'd say focus on your staff, make them feel amazing, like they're successful, like they're set up for success, and they'll naturally take care of your customers.
Completely they will. And they will treat the customers like part of their team and part
Yeah,
of that. And if they feel part of the heart, if they know they're part of something bigger, then they become your marketing, they become your marketeers, they become your advocates. So then that's what your customers become. And there's so many businesses that I see missing that trick, and everyone talks about marketing and this new strategy, and actually the heart of your business is the strategy, the culture you're creating, the culture you become known for. That's what get you the good reviews. So culture comes in everything. Even if you are a small business owner, you have to think about the culture that you want to create. And when I speak to small business owners and I start talking like this, and they're like, "But Diane, there's just me, I've not got a member of staff, I do everything." I'm like, "But imagine you do.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you do. Imagine you have a team. Imagine wherever you want this business to go, start acting like it now."
Yeah.
And it's almost like that, talk to yourself
Yeah.
like your future self. And if you
Yeah, and
start,
that's where a lot of businesses will fall down. Because I
yeah,
typically work with businesses that are well established, been
yeah,
around for years and years. But I believe the same ethos, like you said, needs to be born into a brand new business. If you're running around like a headless chicken, multitasking, working here, there, and everywhere, at the point where you want to bring someone in, what are you bringing them into? Because if
mm-hmm.
this is how you work and how you operate and how you get stuff done, that's what you then inflict on the next person. If
And
you're
if you
never
wait,
taking time off or having a lunch break or
yeah, and if
thinking
you
about
wait
how
for
do I
that to
do this,
happen,
yeah, how do I do this process well? How do I learn from it? How do I build systems and operations so that it's slick and efficient and we're progressively getting better at the things we do?
mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you're bringing someone else into that level of chaos.
Well, that's it. And if you wait till you're ready for
Mhm.
anything, you'll wait forever. And if you try and grow your business, or like you say, bring somebody else in and hand over the chaos, or you're desperate for somebody to do your content, but if you don't know how to do your content, how do you know what you want somebody else to do? And it's just, I think people really miss that part of the foundations, because they think it's just me, it's just my wee business, and it's not. As soon as you start, if you have one client or one customer, they're a part of your culture, and you have to think about how you're being seen, how you're showing up, what your customer
Yeah.
experience is like, and it definitely is a missing part. So what do you think are the kind of fundamentals, if a business would come to you and say, right, let me think about what my business looks like, and what do you think are the fundamentals when it comes to culture that
Okay,
people could
so
kind of take
I
away?
built a framework, as most businesses have. And I didn't just want a boring corporate bland framework. I wanted something that felt like me, felt authentic. So I built a cake, and my friend bought me a necklace with it on. Look at that.
Oh, that's amazing. That's exactly like your cake.
So it's got 5 layers. And so it's a 5-layer rainbow cake, which is my framework, which is the culture cake. And you need to bring to life these 5 layers in your business, whether there's one person, 5 people, or 5,000 people, it'll work. And the 5 layers are: make it easy. So, whatever you've got to do and whatever you're asking other people to do, they're naturally the experts in that. But we need to make it easy for them to come to work and do the thing they do best and remove all the barriers and things in their way. Because when you can't just get stuff done, because people naturally want to get stuff done, you're then infuriated and you're stressed and you're like, oh, it's so hard to do anything around here. And that's not there. And I looked for it over there and that's not there. And that chaos we spoke about. So we need to make it easy for people to get stuff done. We also need to make it easy for them to do the right thing and hard to do the wrong thing, so that
Mm-hmm.
you're learning over time. Within that layer, I talk a lot about the psychology of human error.
Uh-huh.
Even with the rise of AI and robots, they're never going to take over all of the aspects of the people running stuff in your business. People are innovative, adaptable, flexible, but they're also really fallible and they make mistakes. But there are things in your business that make it more likely that someone will make a mistake. So there's a lot of work we can do around that. But if you just think about, what can I do to make it easy for me to do stuff and for other people to do stuff in my business, that'd be a great place to start. And if you're not sure, go and ask that question to people that work there, because
That's
they'll
it.
tell you where it's not easy.
I think too many people just are so scared of asking questions like,
Yeah.
oh, if I open this can of worms, or if I do this or do that. And I think, well, your staff are thinking it anyway.
Yeah.
So you may as well be in the loop.
And
You
they're
may as
grumbling
well.
about it in the tea room. And
Yeah.
even if you do open a can of worms, just pick one and deal with that one first.
And fix
Don't
it.
be afraid of opening the floodgates or a can of worms. You don't have to fix everything immediately. You could do one thing to fix one thing, and that would be a start and improvement. The second layer is called speak up. So it links to this notion of psychological safety, but I just think that's quite an academic term, so I prefer to
Yeah.
call it speak up. But we want everybody in your business to be able to speak up and raise not only concerns and frustrations, or that looks a bit dodgy and that's really not working, but also ideas and suggestions. Whatever problems your business is going to face now or in the future, the people that work there know your business better than anyone else. They've probably got the answers and the solutions, but only if you give them the permission, the respect, and the freedom to speak up candidly, and they're actually met with people that are going to listen. And it's almost like trust, that you can't see it, but you can feel it. It takes a while to build it over time, but you can lose it in one negative interaction. And then
Absolutely.
people are like, oh, I'm not saying anything again because Diane bit my head off.
But I definitely think my staff would have said that at some point.
Yeah, but equally, you're also allowed to have bad days. You might have had a bad day and you might have been short with someone, but then it takes a real courageous leader to go, look, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wasn't in on my best form yesterday and I'm sorry. And then actually that goes to heal and repair
Absolutely.
that damage that you may have done, because we're not on top form every day, are we?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And again, lots of business intelligence is just trapped within your workforce because you haven't got the platforms and the space and the time for people to raise stuff. Maybe you do a survey once a year, but that's just not going to cut it. People need that two-way conversation frequently to speak openly about work, because people want to get stuff done and do it well, and they want to be able to contribute to what that looks like. The third one, and this is my favorite, and it seems to really resonate with people, is frustrations into focus. So if I'm frustrated at work, it means there is something in my way of me doing my best work today. So it's every leader's job to work out what's frustrating the people in their team and put a focus on it. And I think we want to be doing one of three things. If we can remove that thing that's making me frustrated, let's just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. If we've got control and autonomy to get rid of that thing, let's do it. If we can't remove it, can we reduce it in some way so it's less of a frustration? Because maybe it's business critical and we can't just bin it. We do need it, but can we reduce it in some way? Make it less onerous? Or if we can't remove and reduce, then what we need to do, rather than going, nothing we can do, can we reframe it in some ways? Say Bob is really frustrated that he's busy packing up these products to go out and he's got to fill in this form. It's like 6 pages long. He doesn't see the point of it. He doesn't think anybody uses it. And it's like, oh, it's just annoying me. But actually, we need that. And Sandra over in accounts uses all that information so that the customer can pay for that. But Bob doesn't know any of that because no one's ever told him.
Yeah.
If we then take Bob and Sandra explains to Bob, I'm really grateful for all this information you stick on this form for me. I appreciate it's a pain, but without that, the customer's not paying for that product that you've just sent out. So that's how we close the loop. Then Bob might be like, oh, yeah, I get it. And that 5-minute conversation has helped Bob reframe that part of his job that has been frustrating him for years. And actually, if businesses took the time to help get people to see the bigger picture of some of the stuff we ask them to do and the purpose of it, they're more likely to be less frustrated. And it's not a job and finish. It's like you're washing. Like, it's just a cycle. So whatever you fix this week, there might be something next week, next month that's then getting in my way again. So leaders need to be constantly going, hey, and just ask this question: what is frustrating you today about working here? What is getting in your way? What is the biggest thing that's getting in your way? And then do something about it.
That's brilliant. Totally. Like, I'm nodding my head along with all of that. And what I can think about is that I used to say to my team, we had to do a lot of figures, and quite often I'd ask for them, like, lots of times throughout the day. We had to keep an eye on our KPIs that closely. And I used to say to them, but do not fill a figure out if you do not know what it means. You have to
Okay.
come and find me and we'll do it, because it is pointless. If you're
Yeah.
just filling it out so that I don't get angry, there's no
Yeah.
point. You have
Yeah.
to understand what those figures are telling you and what action you need to take after it. Because obviously, if they're doing the figures, they're in a position of responsibility and in a position of decision making to move on. It says, but do not fill it out until you understand it. So
Yeah.
if it's just like, yeah, I've done that, boss, I filled out all the figures. I'm like, okay, what are you going to do now? Oh, I don't know, because I don't know what four meant. Four
Yeah.
means you now need to go and take this action.
Yeah.
Giving them that knowledge and feeding them with that
It's like
knowledge that,
empowering them, isn't it?
yeah,
You're
exactly.
empowering them, one, to come to you and have a speak up culture, but two, so that there's meaning in their work.
Uh-huh.
Because without meaning, it's frustrating because it feels pointless. And then the last two layers are all about learning. So learning from failure. So every business, every person is going to fail, but we need to see that as an opportunity to learn. Something's gone wrong. And it's not about who did it and who touched it last and who was involved. It's about how did it go wrong and how can we do something different next time. And typically the industries I'm working in are really afraid to fail. So when they do, they all get their heads down and hide. And then people aren't speaking up. So then we don't get the opportunity to learn. And I want those kinds of businesses to see that failure is inevitable. Of course, it's inconvenient. It's going to put some downtime. Maybe we've hurt someone. Maybe we've lost some money. But it's a real opportunity to learn. And if we don't seize that opportunity, it's all been for nothing.
Do you think from those industries that you worked in, do you think that that's been born out of that when it's a failure, it's quite big? Like you say, it can be
Potentially,
somebody
yeah.
being injured. It can be a lot of money. You know, we're not talking about one customer's order. Get like one customer's order in that industry is hundreds of thousands of
Yeah. And
pounds,
there's obviously a
possibly.
massive scale
Yeah,
of what failure looks like. Yeah, and I think that's part of it. But again, because we've been so reactive and so negatively focused on failure, we're losing the real opportunity to learn. Even if it is a
absolutely.
big one, that means there must be so much learning there.
Well, that's it,
And then we
because then
can
if you
use that
don't
to
learn
prevent.
from it and address
Yeah,
it, that exact same mistake could happen again
yeah.
if you just
And
bury
even
your
worse.
head in the
Yeah,
sand. And
yeah. So I'm doing a lot of work to help them really see that. And often it feels counterproductive. But as we know, failure is just a part of learning and innovating and adapting. And if you're not failing, you're never going to be successful. And so
absolutely.
it's dropping that ego away and saying, look, I made a mistake. I got this wrong. I messed up. And as a leader, if you do that, actually creates that speak up culture where someone can go, yeah, I made a mistake on that too, because they feel more likely to share because the boss or the leader's also been, I say, strong enough to be vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
Because it takes a real bravery and a real courage to say, actually, I messed up. Because I think old fashioned leadership is you're so strong and you're bullish and you're brash and you're assertive and you're perfect and you get it right all the time. But we know that's not true.
Well, nobody is.
Yeah.
Nobody is. And, you know, I'd much rather work with somebody or for somebody who was like, okay, we got that wrong. Now, what can we do to fix it? You know, I'd much rather work for somebody than that was just like, well, yeah, it's your mistake because I would never make it.
Yeah. And but that does exist, and that level of ego is still there in business, which again just shuts people down. People aren't going to speak up and share their perspective, and we're not going to learn. And that's why some industries are just a bit stuck and a
Yeah.
bit stagnant, which then affects the culture. And then the final layer is everyday learning. So learning from normal everyday work, because most days your teams are successful and they deliver what they said they were going to deliver on time, to budget, whatever it might be. And often we think if nothing's gone wrong, everything's brilliant, we just do the same tomorrow. But actually, if we paused and reflected at the end of each day or end of each shift or even at the end of each week and go, right, what went really well and what didn't? Because sometimes you didn't fail, but you were really close to it and you just got away with it. You were just lucky. We just hit that deadline, but everyone's a bit stressed and we
Hmm.
did 8 extra hours. That's we don't want to carry on doing that. So we need to examine the type of work we're doing, how we're doing it, so that we can learn from it and do the good stuff more, so that we can improve and actually catch some of the negative, bad stuff that's not helping us as a business.
No, I completely, like, I'm nodding along to like everything that you're saying in that, and I love the cake analogy, and it just brings, and I think it must be hard for you with the industries you're going to, because the cake makes it fun and makes it memorable for people.
Yeah.
But it's hard industries to take fun to, to make them like crack into that.
I'd say it is and it isn't, because like I described earlier, like the level of banter and joviality and almost
Yeah, yeah.
immaturity means that we have a good laugh in the session. So I typically do like workshops and group coaching and sort of keynotes and stuff. And actually, we can break down some of that and actually see the point, even though at times it is serious. I think there is that joviality in those kind of industries. Is that a word? I don't know if I just made that
I
up.
think jovialness,
Yeah.
joviality. Well, we've just made it up if
Yeah, I'm
there is.
down with it.
But I think it's important as well, because I think when you are dealing with serious topics, and particularly industries that probably to the outsiders are pretty boring, corporate world doesn't exactly light fires under people when you talk about it. So I think to bring in that element of fun, to make them see that it is serious and the impact that it can have, but it doesn't mean you have to have a serious take on it. It doesn't mean the person putting in those processes, dealing with those operations, doing the coaching needs to be serious. It just needs to be
Yeah.
taken seriously, and the impact that it can have. I really, really, really love everything you're doing. I
Thank
think
you.
it's great. And as I say, I love when people are talking about culture, because I think it's a really misunderstood word in
Yeah.
the workplace and the impact that it can have.
I'm really under invested in. So
Yeah.
most businesses have got a budget for marketing and brand, and they'll have a fancy website and do adverts and communicate outwardly to their customers, because obviously the customers are what pay the money, which keeps the machine turning. But they often don't reflect much back. Or if it does, they've just done a values workshop, got 5 generic values like integrity and honesty, and then just bang them on the walls and give everyone a mouse mat and a mug. I'm going, yeah, we've got a great culture because we've got a mug that says like honesty on it. But don't take the time to actually fundamentally build an operation that sets people up for success, that removes barriers and frustrations and actually listens to people. Or if you've got the values, how are you living and breathing them?
Well, this is it. How are they living and breathing it within their teams? Do their teams know what those values actually mean?
Yeah.
Do their teams believe that, say they use integrity, do their teams think that they are an integrity company? Or do their teams sit
Yeah.
there and go, what do
Yeah.
they
Because
know
I bet
about
you've been
integrity?
We've all been there where we're looking for a job and we got an interview and we researched the company online and we're like, "Whoa, this looks like an excellent place to work," because it just sounds really like caring and compassionate. But I think a lot of businesses do a really good job at promoting that outwardly and they don't reflect it back in. But I'd say invest that money actually with your team, and then you won't need to do that outwardly because your team will do it for you.
But this is it. And also, if they're looking at their marketing or thinking why things aren't working, or they're looking into, if the times they do look internally when they start to think this team's too big, we need to start cutting people, the effectiveness isn't there, people aren't working hard enough. If they don't look at the culture, if they don't look at how their staff, like you say, it's just going to be something that keeps going in a circle
Yeah.
and they can never get. And obviously, nothing is ever one and done. So it's something they're going to have to keep
Yeah.
evolving through. But if they don't understand the fundamentals of their culture and how effective their staff are, then they're just going to keep throwing money outwardly and keep
Yeah.
losing money inwardly. And it just doesn't make any sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. So if you're listening, this is what you need to do. If you're corporate, look at your culture today. And if you're a
Yeah.
small business owner thinking, I don't know how this affects me, it does.
Yeah.
It can help all of your bottom lines. You can start your culture now and think about your customers, your audience. That is your culture. They
Mhm.
see what you are showing up like, see those values, and if you're living and breathing them. You know, you can't say that you're sticking to vulnerability and you never show yourself vulnerable, because
Yeah.
that doesn't work. Well, as you know, I ask everybody that comes on the podcast to answer 3 questions to do with joy on every episode. So we will start with yours. The first one is the joy spotlight, a favourite thing that has helped shape your life, business, or work.
Okay, so when I thought of this question, I thought of yellow, and you can probably see that. But
Yes.
actually, it sounds funny, but I've always liked yellow, and really only recently gave myself permission to really lean into it. And I built my brand around yellow. And now when I do speaking gigs or go to networking, I just wear yellow. And like my cake is rainbow colors. And they call it dopamine dressing, don't they? But
Yeah.
yellow does something to my brain. It boosts me up. So when I see yellow, when I wear yellow, when I'm projecting yellow and bright into the world, it makes me feel amazing. And I give myself permission to do that, because then I know I show up differently and I have the opportunity to have a bigger impact on the people that I get to have workshops with and group coaching and do my keynotes with, because I know I'll bring a different energy. It's yellow, but the key is that I gave myself permission to do it, because I think for years I just stifled it and wasn't able to be me.
Why do you think it was stifled? Why do you think it was the industries you were in? Did you not
Actually, I
think
mean, I
that?
did wear a lot of high vis yellow, which is slightly. But I think, yeah, maybe it was the industries. And actually, now I also dress a lot more feminine than I used to, because I think that masculine energy meant that I was trying to compete with loads of men, and I didn't need to, nor should I have. But I dulled down, they call it masculine, don't they? I dulled down my feminine side because I was trying to be seen as a man. And I
Mhm.
know not everyone will be able to relate to that, but now I've given myself permission to dress how I want to dress, and I built my brand around that, and actually I feel so much better for it. And I think it leans into that, if you get to be authentic, if you get to be you, whatever that looks, feels and sounds like, that will actually make you feel good, and then you get to positively impact more people. So I think
Absolutely.
that's it. So I feel like, does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And do you know what's lovely about it? I don't like yellow. So yellow isn't, although I currently live in a yellow house. When we moved into the house, and we've been in it far too long for it still to be yellow. But I
Like
don't
bright
like,
yellow.
yeah, well, it's yellow. Like, people say, is yours the yellow house? I mean, there's no kind of getting around with it. But when I see you in yellow, and when I see all of your branding, I don't even see yellow. I
Mm,
just see happiness and energy and confidence. So it just goes to show that, because you are so, and I don't mean the word comfortable in a you're comfortable, you're too
mm,
comfortable, but in a you are so comfortable in your own skin point
yeah.
of view, that it is just, it radiates. So I
Mm.
don't look at you and think, I don't look and think, she's got yellow brands and I don't really like
Yeah,
yellow. I don't see the yellow. I don't see the colour. It's not about my
yeah,
personal choice. It's about the fact of how you
yeah,
make me feel, the branding makes me feel. And that's what I see when you're, because obviously since I've known you, you've worn yellow every time, I think,
yeah,
that I've seen you. So I don't even think like that. It is just the
yeah,
vibrancy that you bring. I think whatever you're doing, it's working. So keep
yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing, and I've only recently understood what we mean when we say energy, but it's literally how you feel, and then that radiates out from
Hmm.
you. And I know that doing the things that make me feel good are actually going to benefit my business and my clients, because
Absolutely.
people will feel it. And I
Exactly.
never really understood that before.
Yeah, and I don't think I did either. And then people always said to me, whenever I've stood up, I had to stand up and speak a lot in my previous job, like sometimes on a daily basis to like a very, very large team. And people used to say, you just feel so confident. And I said, because it's not about me. If I had to do it for me, then I would crumble. but it's not about me. It was about them. It was about the job. It was about the result that we needed to get. And because I was so passionate about the team, because I was so passionate about my job, I was able to have that energy and do that thing. And I think that's still where it comes from. And people say to me now about showing up online, and I'm actually really introverted, but I do the podcast, I do lives, I show up. But that's because it's about a bigger thing. It's not about Diane. It's about the bigger thing that I want to achieve. And yes, I want to achieve it for myself, but it's not about me personally. So I'm able to do that, to do that thing. And that's when you bring the energy. And when I'm just comfortable with what I'm going to do online, I show up in a better energy than something that I'm trying to force. And I think it's really important. And you have to be, and that's where authenticity comes from. Whether people like the word or not, it's the more authentic you are, the more you are just yourself, the easier and the better energy you have. Because if you try and be something you're not, it's really hard to keep up.
Yeah.
Really
Definitely.
hard to keep up. Okay, and the second one is inspired by joy. It's either a book or a mentor that has shaped your world.
Okay, so I think I put 2 down. So Claire Hill. So she's been my coach for about 2 years now, and she really got me to do the inner work, to see the value of self-belief and being able to then be me, be authentically me, and then drop off all those self-limiting beliefs and then do those big hard things. So I think that is definitely a massive
Here's how we know each other. So
and we're
talking
both
about energy, that is, she is energy.
Yeah. And then my second one, I bought the book actually, and look how yellow it is.
I do actually have that book.
So Jen Sincero, and this is called You Are a Badass. She's got a few books actually, but again, it's just, she's really American and straight talking and no nonsense. But again, it's about like strip off all the conditioning that we've had, and we've all been exposed to it. And you can only see it when you're able to see it and then go, right, that's why I think that. And that's why I think I can't do that, and get rid of all that. Because I think as business owners, no one really tells you this at the start, but you end up doing so much work on yourself to even be able to be a business owner. And books like that and Jen Sincero and Claire Hill are just helping us unpick some of that stuff that we're all kind of like was just put on us and we didn't know at the time, because you don't know what you don't know. And now I've done so much work to kind of unpick some of my stuff and just grow. And I do feel like a new woman.
It is, and I think people underestimate it as well when they're first starting out, because they think, if I just learn this strategy, or if I get my business base, or if I try this new marketing strategy or this new tactic that everyone's doing is the latest trend, then that's when my business will take off. But if you've not got the mindset in place, if you've not got the resiliency, if you can't work on your courage, then you can have all the strategy in the world, but it's going to keep stopping and keep failing and keep stalling. And you might get a little bit overnight success and then it'll halt again, and you won't know why until you start unpicking that word. And you wrote on the form with the questions, you wrote that Jen Sincero helped you to be a badass. And I remember when I first met you in person last September, that was the September, wasn't it? And I remember thinking that word badass is exactly what I thought of you, because you spoke so confidently about your business. You were so vulnerable, because we were in a vulnerable space sharing things. You were so vulnerable with your shares, but in a knowing way, I know this is my vulnerability and I know this is the work that I need to do. And then I remember having a conversation with you afterwards, and you were talking about your kind of personal situation. And I remember when you said to somebody in your life, I've got this. And I looked at you and I was like, I totally believe that she's got this. There's no, I've only I think I'd spent the day with you by that point. We still had another day to go. And I was like, I totally believe that she's got this. There is no doubt in my mind that she has absolutely got this. So that word, all the work you're doing, that word badass, yellow badass, is how I felt on that first time.
I remember that scenario, and I remember I felt then. And I think the word is conviction. Like, I know when I say stuff, I'm not just saying it to sound good. Like, I mean it. And I think having that self-belief means you've got conviction in what you say you're going to do, and then you do it. And then what you're going to believe, even if you don't know what the outcome is yet, even though you don't know the how, like I know good things are going to happen. I know my business is going to be even more successful, and whatever dreams I've got now and in the future, I'm going to hit them. I don't know how long it's going to take, and I don't necessarily know the path there, but having that anchor of belief, knowing it is coming and it is going to be worth all this work I'm doing, I think is what you need. And of course, we all have wobbles where we don't believe and we're like, oh, this is so hard, I don't want to
Yeah.
bother.
Yeah.
But then you anchor back into, no, I'm like, this is hard, but so am I.
Yeah.
Like, this is really tough, but I'm really tough. Like, I can do hard things. And even though we see all these like Instagram quotes and mantras and stuff, actually, you need to live and breathe those. Like we said with the values of your culture,
Yeah.
you have to live and breathe those quotes because they're not just fancy pictures on Instagram. You have to
No.
live and breathe them. And when times are tough, you have to go, no, I am strong and I am brave and I can do that. And I think that's the inner work I've done. And it's nice that you could see that because often you think people can't see all the work I've done. But
Yeah.
actually, even if they didn't notice, I know because I can feel it.
Well, that's it. And I totally did get that. And that conversation that we had was just us. You weren't performing for anybody. I wasn't a possible client you were trying to spin to.
Yeah,
It was literally just two people having a conversation about kind of, I think we we're just talking about the future and what we wanted and what we wanted to do, but very relaxed.
yeah,
And I just remember you saying it. And as I say, it stuck with me till now because
yeah,
I was just
nice.
like, I absolutely believe she absolutely does have
Yeah.
this completely and utterly. And the last one is the joy killer, the thing you would like to see removed from the world.
So I think I kind of came out of two that kind of link. So it's the word stuck. It's the word stuck, and it's this mentality around, oh, well, I'm stuck here. Maybe it's stuck in a job or stuck in a team or stuck with some circumstances or even stuck in a relationship. And again, I'm not trying to sound like insensitive, but I genuinely don't believe anyone is stuck. I now know firsthand that I've got loads of choices. There's loads of things I can do, and I'm not ever stuck. And I suppose linked to that is this idea that like people moan. And I'm not saying all moaning is bad. Sometimes we need to just have a little
Oh, we
rant,
need a good moan.
park it and move on. Like moaning about something is not going to get you out of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And some people then can just perpetually moan. And I think only now can I see it that I'm actively choosing not to moan myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I find in different groups of people, I'm now observing the moaning for what it is. And maybe like 2 years ago, I was just deep in there moaning because it's quite habitual, isn't it? And
Yeah.
lots of people moan. And we said today, didn't we? Because the weather is glorious this week,
Yeah.
that I am not going to moan about the weather. Yet I bet you see loads of people that are going, it's
Well,
hot,
yeah,
but
they'll either be, oh, it's
hot.
too hot and I can't work, or typical
Yeah,
that it's sunny and the kids aren't off school, or I need to be working, or well, just be happy that your drive to work was sunnier today. Or you can look
yeah,
out the window and it's sunnier, or the window's open, you're not freezing. There's so many, and it is just sometimes a reframe. Like you can feel stuck,
yeah.
but be aware that you feel stuck and be prepared to make a choice to get out of it, but not use it as an excuse to stay where you are.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And I just feel like my tolerance for that stuckness and that moaning, the moaning without action, is something that gets my back up a bit now. And I maybe observe it more than I used to because I know there's another way. There's always a silver lining, there's always things to be grateful for because I really lean into that. And so, yeah, I feel like that is a joy killer because how can you be joyful and positive and grateful when you're moaning,
Moaning. Well, nothing
even
good can
about
come
the
of it.
sun?
And as I say, everybody needs a good moan. If you need a day to feel, if something awful's happened, you need a day to feel your feelings, to have a good cry, to get it all out, to have a rant, then absolutely do it. But then decide what action you're going to take next. And I think my clients, when they listen to this, will definitely say that that's kind of what I'm like. I'm like, rant to me all you want, but
Yeah,
then tell me what you're going to do. And if
yeah,
you're not going to do anything, then it's time to stop your business. And they're kind of like, what? I'm like, well, you've just told me you hate it and you think you're
Yeah.
stuck and there's
Yeah,
nothing
tell me
you can
about it.
do. And all the
Yeah.
solutions I'm giving you, you're telling me you can't do. So it's time to shut up shop. And
Yeah.
oh, but I don't want to do that. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's decide what action we're going to take,
Yeah.
because you can't just stay stuck in that cycle because nothing will ever change. And I think, and it's not that you can't be stuck or you can't moan, you absolutely can, but then you need to take action and do something about it. Even if it's something you have no control over, you need to decide to park it.
Yeah.
You can only
But
worry
reframe
about the
it.
things that
Yeah.
you can affect.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
I hear that because the work I do with teams, often I get them to talk about what it's like here, and then they naturally moan, and I've almost given permission to moan, and then I go, okay, so I've got all this stuff up. What are we going to do? And they're like, well, it's not really my problem, is it? And then I have to take them on a journey to go. This is stuff you've been moaning about. It's clearly a problem. It's clearly getting in your way. So what can we do?
Hmm.
And they're like, oh, well, I didn't expect to be fixing anything, because they were almost stuck in the,
Yeah.
oh, well, this just, we like to moan about it because that's all we do. We don't think there's almost
Why
no,
we're friends. That's why the team, because we're just used to moaning and we don't have
yeah,
anything else in common if we're not moaning.
yeah. And that's the bit you've got to slowly unpick. And you can't do it in one go,
No.
but you slowly sow the seeds of, oh, okay, I have got some control and influence here, and I can control and influence how I feel about it and how I react. And I always say, like, if I'm frustrated, I'm going to moan to you. Then I'm going to ring Sandra up and moan to her. Then I'm going to email Bob about it. And then when I see Julie in the tea room, I'm going to tell her as well. And you end up retelling the same story 18 times to the same
And then
people.
quite often it grows.
Just really,
It grows arms and legs every time that you retell the story as well. And it's also that thing, if you're moaning to somebody about somebody else, who's moaning about you?
yeah,
No, it's just the
yeah,
people they're very short sighted and on that. But yeah, I don't like a moan and I don't like a gossip. It's not,
yeah,
even though I will moan, I'm completely
yeah,
human and I will moan and I will break down and I'll have a good cry. But as you say, then you pick yourself up and decide what that action is going to be. Okay, so if people want to work with you, come and find you, feed off your energy, where is the best place to come and find you?
So my website is www.culturekick.co.uk, or my kind of main platform is LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn every day, put loads and loads of content out, loads of free videos and stuff. So you're welcome to find and connect me on there, or I am on Instagram as well.
Amazing. I'll put all the links in the show notes. So all you need to do is go and click and find Becky. It's definitely worth your time. But before you go, I always get everyone to answer one final question.
Okay.
And that is, what is the joy legacy that you would like to leave behind?
I think just the kind of yellow brightness of positivity, in that, like, it doesn't have to be boring and bland and moany. Like, we can have a really good time and get a load of work done and be really successful. And yeah, that piece about culture, like, that is so important,
Work can
because,
be
like you
fun.
said, we spend so much time at work. Let's just have a good time there, because it is possible. And I want
Absolutely.
to be the sowing the seeds of a different way of looking at work and your culture specifically.
And you'll have a much more successful company because of
Yeah,
it.
of course you will. It's a win-win.
Yeah, you've sold to me. You have sold to me. Thank you so much, Becky, for coming on today. It has been a joy. I think you'll be able to tell how much I enjoyed that conversation and how powerful the conversation with Becky actually was. And a massive reminder that culture isn't just a HR word, isn't just a pool table put in a breakout room, isn't just the things that people think it is. It's actually the heartbeat of any business. Whether you're leading a team, hiring your first freelancer, or just thinking about the kind of culture you would want your business to have, you really should think about starting it straight away. You want to build the kind of environment that you want yourself, your team, your employees, and your customer and clients to be in. So here are my three biggest takeaways. That culture is happening whether you design it or not. And when you think about that, it is so worth the effort to make it intentional. Rather than allow a culture to create itself, be intentional about setting it up. Because all the best businesses, relationships, and life is done on purpose. Number 2, that leadership sets the tone. You will have heard the phrase, the fish rots from the head down. It's all about the leadership within the business. But it's not about being perfect. It's about being present, curious, and consistent, and being part of the team. Number 3, we can't do our best work where we don't feel safe. And creating a psychological safety is a business skill, not a nice to have. If your team, if your employees do not enjoy turning up to work in a place where they feel seen and heard and safe, you can guarantee that you do not have an efficient workforce, and you have a guarantee that as a workforce that you might not have tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I do, and I hope you realise that at any stage of business, from the day one with just you right up to a business with hundreds of thousands of employees, that culture is super, super important. If you love this episode, please do share it with someone else who's navigating their own culture building journey, or perhaps somebody that wants to go to their business and have the conversation. And if you're looking for strategy, support, and a community, and to create your own team outside of your entrepreneurial journey, and a community that puts people at the heart of business, then come join us inside the Joywork Members Club. The doors are opening tomorrow, Friday the 9th of May, for a limited time, for a limited spaces. And all you need to do is be on the wait list, where you will get all of the information, all of the bonuses, all of the offers before anybody else. And that's the Joywork Members Club, where joy isn't just a feeling, it's a strategy. If you have also enjoyed the episode, please come and like, review, and subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And also to let us find more people who need to hear these joyful stories. But as always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.